I started and then I realized that I wasn't videotaping, so sorry, one act people. This is 4-3 dividing polynomials, but instead of long division, it is synthetic division. This is super, super, superly easier than what long division was. You're going to like this a lot better, but you can only use synthetic division in specific cases, okay? Before I go any further with synthetic division, I want you to look at your homework assignment. We went through number 8. And what I want you to do is, there's a typo on here. I want you to change this 9 to an 8 instead, okay? Then it will come out really, really super nice for you. So change that 9 to an 8 on number 8 on skills practice, okay? Which is the only page that you should have, all right, for this lesson. So that 9 needs to be changed to an 8 on number 8, okay? So synthetic division. We're looking at this box right here, and I told them don't write anything down. I'm going to show you how you get this answer. We are taking this thing, x to the third minus 2x squared minus 8x minus 35, and we are dividing by x minus 5. We know how to do that with long division, but here's how you set it up with synthetic division. You start with this thing, and you do a little box that looks like this. I'm going to do it off to the side over here. You start with this little box, and then you write in these numbers. 1, -2, -8, -35. Those came from up here. 1, -2, -8, -35. So you set it up 1, -2, -8, -35. I'm running out of room. There you go. So that's how you set it up. Now, you also need this one over here, this number. So, let me come back to you guys over here. This number right here, what is that number?
X minus 5 from like the, wait, what are you saying, where it's from?
What is this number right here? Read me that number.
5.
5. Is it a positive 5 or a negative 5?
Positive.
It is a positive 5, but problem, I was dividing by x minus 5. Why do I get positive 5?
Flip the sign.
You flip the sign. Basically, every time you're dividing synthetically, this guy right here, you set him equal to 0. If I set x minus 5 equal to 0 and I add 5 to both sides, x is actually equal to positive 5. Right? Yes, that's where that positive 5 comes from, okay? Now, that is something that we have to do in synthetic division, but we don't have to do in long division. And what doing that does, what changing that 5 from a negative 5 to a positive 5 does, is it, like when we were doing long division, it applies the negative each time. It changes the sign for us each time. That's what it does. On each one of those steps, by changing that from a negative 5 to a positive 5, it does that for us, okay? So, every time, synthetic division, you have to use the opposite symbol. You have to use a positive 5 rather than a negative 5. Use the opposite, okay? So, now, as soon as you start with these numbers, what you do, the very first step, is you drop this 1 down. You don't do anything. This 1 becomes 1, okay? And then you multiply. 5 times 1 is 5. That number goes here. Then you add these two together. So -2 and 5 makes 3. And then you multiply by 5. So multiply. That makes 15. Then you add. -8 and 15 makes 7. Then you multiply by 5, which makes 35. Then you add. -35 and positive 35 make 0. Did you get lost?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll do that again. Okay? So, the very first thing is do what? After you get it all set up, by the way. Drop the 1. I'm going to do it over here on mine. You drop the 1. The 1 comes down. And then what do? Multiply by 5, and that number goes here. 1 times 5 is 5, and then you add. -2 plus 5 is 3, and then you multiply by 5, which is 15, and then you add. -8 and 15 is 7, and then 5 times 7 is 35, and then -35 plus 35 is 0, okay? You always drop the first number. Yes, exactly. Okay? Now, I always put this last one in a box because this is your remainder. That's your remainder. What happens if you have 0 remainder?
It's a nice answer.
It's a nice answer. You don't have a remainder, right? You don't have a remainder. So now, the hardest part after doing synthetic division is taking this guy and rewriting the answer. Like with the x's included, okay? So here's what we're going to do. I have 1, 3, and 7, right? 1, 3, 7 are my answers, okay? If I started with the highest power was x to the third power, right? And if I divide by an x, what should my power be now?
X squared.
X squared. So this is going to be 1x squared. This is going to be 3x, and that's going to be 7 with no x attached to it. I'm going to apply my positives. 1x squared plus 3x plus 7 is my final answer. Do you see that? So whatever you started with, x to the third, we were dividing by an x, so you go 1 down from that. It's going to be x squared now. And you reapply your x's. Good? After the 3, because you just go down. So you start with x squared, then you go down 1, that's x, and then this is no x's. Or you could start x to the third, x squared, x, and then just the number, right? You just keep going stair-stepped down, fewer x's every time. Does that make sense? Okay? All right, so we're going to do one. Finally, you're taking this guy, and you're dividing by x minus 4. Okay? Before I do anything, I'm going to do x minus 4 equals 0, and x equals positive 4. And where do I put that positive 4? On the outside. 4 goes here. Okay? Now, the coefficients in front of these numbers tells me what goes up here. So I start with 2, and then what? Negative 13, and then 26, and then negative 24. Okay, now I'm ready to go. First thing, drop down the 2, and then multiply. So that gives me 8, and then negative 13 plus 8. Negative 5. Yep, make sure you get your positives and negatives right. 4 and negative 5 I multiply, so that makes negative 20. And if I add those, 26 and negative 20 is 6. 4 and 6, 24. And negative 24 plus 24 is 0. Again, that's a good number. I always put this last number in a box so that I know that that's my remainder. And I have 0 remainder, and that's nice, okay? This next one, we're probably going to have a remainder. Maybe. So, I started with x to the third power, and I'm dividing by an x, okay? So what should 2 have next to him? X squared. 5 should have x, and then 6 shouldn't have an x on it. What else do I need to add? Plus. I'm going to put a positive 6 there, and this is my final answer. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Oh, so much better than long division, right?
Yeah.
You know which one I like better?
Long division.
I still like long division. Yes. So x to the third power. X. Basically, you look at what you're dividing by. You look at the highest power of x, and then you go 1 down from that. That's where you start. Yes. Good question. Okay. Let's see. Use synthetic division to find this thing. Okay. Now. Whew, yikes. Divisors with first coefficients other than 1. Look at this guy that we're dividing by. 3x plus 1. Yikes. 3x plus 1 equals 0. And then what? Minus 1. 3x equals negative 1. And then divide by 3. X equals negative 1/3. Uh-oh. Where does that go? On the outside. Negative 1/3. No, it should be negative because it was positive in here, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's the opposite. Yes, good question, though. Okay? All right, and then I do my coefficients. So I have 3 and negative 5 and what's the next number? 1. And what's the next number? 7. And what's the next number? 0. I need to have a 0 in this spot. Why? The last one here that I had was an x, and like up here, I need them to go in order, and I need to have each one of the x's represented, right? So if it doesn't have a number on the end here, I'm going to go ahead and put a 0 in its spot. So this would be like plus 0 on the end there, right? I don't give any of them to you, but let's say, for example, let's say I was taking x to the third plus 7x minus 1. And I was dividing that by something on the outside. I don't know. My coefficients, what I would do is I would do 1, I would do 0, 7, and negative 1. Why is this 0 going in that place? There's no x squared, okay? I don't do one of those to you, but that you'll do, when we do long and synthetic division, when you guys take trig and calc in the coming years, we will have some that are like that, and you need to make sure you put a 0 in that spot, okay? So, you won't have any like that, but this one we did need to add a 0 to the end. What?
Will it change the answer if you don't have 0 in there?
Yes. Yes. Yes, it will. Yes, definitely. Okay, so we have him ready to go. We added that 0 on the end there because there's nothing there, and we need to drop the 3. So start with a 3, okay? What is negative 1/3 times 3? Negative 1. So we're going to put that there, okay? Negative 5 divided by added to negative 1. When I put those together? Negative 6. What is negative 1/3 of negative 1/6?
Wait, no.
Positive 2.
Oh,
Positive 2.
yeah.
Because they're both negatives, right? Okay. Now I add 1 and 2 together. Make 3. What's negative 1/3 of 3? Negative 1. And I drop my 7 and negative 1 down is 6. And negative 1/3 of 6 is negative 2. And I add those together. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. It's not going to be a nice answer. Not going to be a nice answer. Negative 2 is my remainder, okay? So we'll write that out over here, and we'll show you what this looks like, okay? So we started with an x to the 4th power. So what should this x be right after the 3 in my answer? X to the 3rd. It should be 3x to the 3rd power minus 6x to the 2nd power plus 3x plus 6 minus 2 over what? I'm not going to put it over negative 1/3 though, even though that was what I was dividing by. What goes underneath of here? What goes under here? What was I dividing by? 3x plus 1. That's kind of a mess. Yuck. See how that remainder complicates things? It makes them a lot ugly, or it doesn't look very nice. But that's what he is divided. Does that make sense? Okay. You put the numbers back in after, or excuse me, the x's back in after you get the numbers. Okay, good? Now, synthetic division. Do you like it better than long? Not really.
No.
See, I like long way better, but so many people say, oh my god, I like synthetic because you don't have to deal with the x's, right? You like strip away all the x's and then you deal with just the numbers and then you put the x's back in. That's why they like it, because they're like, we don't like variables. We will like just numbers. So a lot of people like synthetic division. So, but synthetic division will not always work. That's what this guy is right here. So note, synthetic division will not work when you're dividing by something that's big. So the only time it works is when you're dividing by a binomial. This and that. This and that. There's a binomial here. But here I'm dividing by a quadratic function. It has 3 pieces. Okay? The very first thing you do when you're doing synthetic division is you take this piece or this piece and you set it equal to 0, right? Well, if I set this guy equal to 0, how do I solve for x? You can't, right? So when it's x to the 2nd power that you're dividing by, you can't use synthetic division. Problem. Okay? So that's why on these you must use long division. On today's homework, no. The long divisions were all the ones yesterday. Okay? So on today's homework, I only give you ones that you can do synthetic division with. Yeah? Do it on a couple of them. I want to make sure you know how to do synthetic division. After you do it a couple times, you'll be like, okay, this isn't so bad. What? Hi, Liddell. India wants to say hi to you. India? Hi, Liddell.
Hi.
Liddell. Anybody else shout out?
Hi, Maddie.
Hi, Maddie. Ellie says.
Hi, Maddie.
Who else is missing? Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
What's up, Michelle? Hi, Allie and Michelle.
Allie and Michelle, but Allie's not watching this. I don't think. Maybe Allie will watch this eventually. Who else? What? Caleb?
I just like saying,
Who else is gone?
Keaton.
Keaton. We can't forget that. Keaton.
Kelsey.
Keaton and Kelsey. Hello, Keaton and Kelsey.
Hi, Keaton, Kelsey, Maddie,
Okay.
Liddell. Hi, Ellie.
Michelle.
Michelle.
Liddell, Michelle.
Liddell, Michelle.
Allie, maybe if she watches this eventually, she's in 8th period. There's a lot going 8th period.
8th period, folks, if you're watching this, hi.
Hi.
I forgot your cousin. I mean, sister.
What?
Yeah, India lost your sister. Rose.
Oh. All right. Any other questions on synthetic division? Good? No? Okay, on your homework, hold on, let me before I switch this off, I want to talk about your homework real quick. You have 6 problems for your homework. It looks like this. 6 problems for homework, okay? These first 2 are exactly like the top 4 on your homework yesterday, so you do not do synthetic division with those. You just divide, right? You see, like, what if I take 15 and divide by 5, and r to the 10th and I divide by or r to the 4th, what's left over, okay? That's what your homework assignment looks like, those top 2. These bottom 4 is when you're going to use the synthetic division, okay? Number 3 I have set up for you, ready to go. The other ones you'll have to set up yourself. Good?
Yep.
Yep. Okay? Good? All right.
Bye.
We quit.
Bye.
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 Bing bow.